Hey guys, this is a quick funny one for you. This could end up being a myth. If this one gets picked up by the mainstream media or just by a bunch of nutters on the internet, it could end up being a myth. So this might be one of the rare occasions where we get to talk to you about something before it becomes a myth rather than after it became a myth. We shall see. So the true story is, the non-mythical part of this story is that there's a city in central Japan, in Aichi-ken, called Toyoake City, and the city government passed an ordinance that has said that people during their leisure time, so outside their work and school time, during their leisure time, are not to use their smartphones or tablets for more than 2 hours a day. Right? So imagine what the clickbaiters are going to do with that story. In Japan, it's now illegal to use your phone more than 2 hours a day, right? So yeah, that's the truth. Is that that city has actually brought in this ordinance that says that people shouldn't use their phones or tablets for more than 2 hours a day during their leisure time. It also says that elementary school kids and younger should not use smartphones or tablets after 9 o'clock at night, and junior high school or older shouldn't use their smartphones or tablets after 10 o'clock at night, right? So the rest of the story that the clickbaiters won't talk about is that this ordinance has no penalty and it's not enforceable. It's not legally enforceable, which means it's nothing, right? Right, so the clickbaiters won't mention that last bit. They'll only mention the first bit, of course, because, you know, that's what makes it clickbait. So there was also an interview with the mayor of that city who said that he hopes that this will stimulate conversations in families, and that families will find ways to make their own rules in their homes to avoid using phones and tablets too much. So you can see that perhaps, you know, the city mayor and the other people in his local government there are perhaps trying to achieve a good thing, because perhaps they're concerned that, as a lot of other people are, that, you know, using smartphones and tablets too much is not good for people, and particularly not for kids. So that might be their motivation there. It's classic. There's a few things about this that are sort of interesting. It is classic Japanese government reaction to a problem. So usually the governments here, if there's a problem, they'll either make some new tests. So for example, every time that there's the international test to check the English proficiency levels of all the different English as a second language countries, every time they do that, Japan falls. So it used to be like number 20, then it was number 30 something, then it was number 60 something, now it's number 92. And every time they do that English proficiency test, Japan's level falls. And the Japanese government reaction to that is often, so the last reaction they had was, so we should make a rule that says that all students entering university have to do an English proficiency test. That was their solution, right? Which obviously that's not going to improve the proficiency of the English. All it's going to do is those tests will just further illustrate the lack of proficiency in English amongst high school students, right? So, but that's a typical Japanese reaction. They'll either make a test for it or they'll make a new law for it. And that's their reaction. So instead of that city government, instead of them doing a big campaign and encouraging people, you know, let's go outside and walk outside and enjoy the fresh air and do something together in the park, instead, and leave our phones at home, instead of doing some sort of promotion like that, which would be very clever and would possibly have some results, their idea is to make this unenforceable rule that they think will make people think about it. But as we know, with the rules that already exist, while we're driving along here, I've already seen a whole bunch of people on their phones, and if you guys watch the other vehicles coming the other way, you will too. There is a real law, a prefecture law against using your smartphone or your tablet while you're driving your car, and it is enforceable and it does have a big penalty. But the problem is, in Japan, if something is normal, if people think that something's normal because they see everybody else doing it, they'll do it too, right? So there's a classic example of that, is if you're waiting to cross the street and it says don't walk and there's no cars coming, if you it says don't walk, but you walk, and there's no cars coming, if you walk, there'll be a good chance that a lot of the other people go with you, right? That's the Japanese sort of reaction to things. And so when they see everybody else on the phone, driving their cars, these truck drivers holding the phone up to their ears, and you know, people holding the phones up, as we've showed you lots of time on those crazy driver videos, when they see that they then think it's normal, and so they do it. And they know it's against the law, and they know they can get a penalty for it, but they see it as normal because everybody's doing it, so that's why they do it. And the chances they know that because everybody's doing it, I mean, we've shown you the police actually stopping people for doing it, and the police will give penalties for people doing it, but your chances of getting stopped for doing it must be so remote, because, you know, if thousands of people on this road are doing it, the police are only going to possibly stop one of them. You know, so, and this is sort of the Japanese thinking. So this is the problem with that. Okay, let's make some more tests and let's make some more laws, and maybe that'll fix the problem. And of course, it never does. It never does. You know, what would work much better is some sort of education campaign, particularly in Japanese thinking about being a good citizen. Would be if I was asked to design a campaign to stop any bad habit, I'd be pushing a campaign that shows a negative image, that, you know, using your phone while you're driving your car. The statistics would be a good place to start on that one, because there's a certain number of people that die in Japan every year because someone was staring at a smartphone or using an iPad or something. So that's a statistic. So, you know, from that point of view, or in the case of what this city has tried to address, would be, you know, some statistics on that, you know, students who spend 7-8 hours a day staring at their smartphone tend to get less results at school than others. Or the glasses one. We saw a statistic a little while ago that said it was a huge percentage. It was like 40% of high school kids in Japan are short-sighted, and they reckon it's because of staring at the smartphone. So, you know, that sort of stuff would be the stuff. I mean, if I was designing a campaign, you know, that'd be the sort of stuff I'd promote. That you know, here's one. You know, if you stare at your smartphone 7 hours a day, you're going to end up short-sighted. We see guys here all the time with like really thick glasses and still staring at their phone, holding it a couple inches from their face, because, you know, they just can't put it down. They're addicted. You know, and you guys, a lot of you guys would have seen that places where you live. You know, we see it all the time. Whole families walking into restaurants. We'll be sitting in a restaurant and the whole family will walk in, and mum and dad are holding up their smartphone as they're walking. You know, they can't even put it down as they're walking in a restaurant. They're holding it up. The kids have got their games. They all sit down at the table. You know, they're all sitting there waiting for their dinner to come, all staring at their phones and their games. And, you know, you guys would probably have that in your countries too. It's just the modern thing, isn't it? That everyone's staring at their screens. So, you know, we had one the other day, the table next to us, there was a kid that was about 8 years old, and he walked in staring at his game, and he's sitting there staring at his game, and his mother sort of told him to eat, and he just kept staring at his game. So she picked up a fork, and she was spoon feeding him while he was playing his game, like 8 years old, instead of saying to him, put it down, you know. And again, see, this is the thing, it's become such a normal thing here now that, you know, when they'll walk in with their 1-year-old, put their 1-year-old down in a baby chair, and then hand the 1-year-old the smartphone to stare at, to keep the 1-year-old quiet while they're waiting for their dinner. And because everybody does it, everybody thinks it's normal. So I'd be addressing that. If I had to design a campaign to try and stop people doing it, I'd show images of that and say that's bad parenting. You know, giving a smartphone to your 1-year-old instead of talking to your 1-year-old, instead of playing with your 1-year-old, this is bad parenting, you know. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on what your perspective is, Japanese society doesn't like confrontational type stuff like that. So that's why they like the testing and the rule thing, because it's not confrontational. You know, a confronting advertisement on television saying, you know, if you're staring at your smartphone while you're driving your car, you know, you're putting people's lives at risk and you're a bad citizen, Japanese people would see that as too confronting. You know, or if you're spending 6-7 hours a day staring at your smartphone, you know, you're going to end up short-sighted and dumb because you're not learning anything. So anyway, that's that. So the most important part of this ranting video was the first part about the rule brought in by the city. So you got the reality there. It was basically just a token effort, really. But if it gets picked up by the media, it will be reported that people in Japan, it's illegal in Japan to use a smartphone or tablet for more than 2 hours a day. That's the way they'll report it. What they do is they take the real story and they generalize it, so it makes it seem as if it's across the board, and then they don't give you the whole story. They don't mention that it's a non-enforceable rule and there's no penalty for it. They won't mention that, because that wouldn't be good clickbait, would it? If you told the whole story, that's the problem with that sort of thing. If you tell the whole story, it's not effective clickbait. Anyway, that's more than enough of that. Hopefully someone found that mildly interesting. More videos coming soon.